Straight ahead at noon, a federal report sheds light on the circumstances that may have contributed to the deadly chemical tank rupture at a Longview paper mill, killing 11 people. Plus hundreds of people dead and even more missing in flash flooding in Nepal and China. The race to find survivors as the region faces even more rain. And later, flock cameras are designed to help police fight crime, but now they're becoming the targets of vandalism. A look at what's happening in some Washington cities and why some people don't trust the technology. Plus, the race is on from Mount Hood to Seaside for the annual Hood to Coast Relay. We're taking a live look along the route and checking in with our team out there. Thank you for joining us here at noon. I'm Tim Gordon. We begin with a major update to the paper mill disaster in Longview that killed 11 workers in May. We've learned Nippon Dynawave, the company that owns the plant, was warned months before the disaster that the tank that failed wasn't fit for service. Mo Hyder joins us from the newsroom with more on the latest development here. Mo.
Yeah, Tim, well, according to federal investigators, the company had 10 months warning before that tank failed, unleashing a massive wave, about 900,000 gallons of caustic liquid. An outside contractor inspected the tank in July of last year and found significant thinning in the lower parts of the tank. The U.S. Chemical Safety Board says portions of that tank shell had thinned below the minimum safe thickness standards. The contractor's report said the tank was not fit for continued service unless it was repaired. The same contractor then inspected the tank again in October and also February of this year and found large portions of the tank were still below the minimum safe thickness level. Despite those findings, though, the U.S. Chemical Safety Board says the company didn't fix the tank, take it out of service, or reduce its operating conditions before the explosion in May, killing 11 workers and seriously injuring 3 others as well. The Association of Western Pulp and Paper Workers, which is the union representing the workers, says the investigation raises urgent questions why the tank was left operating. In a statement, a spokesperson says they, quote, will not minimize the seriousness of the information released, but also not draw conclusions about the causation or responsibility beyond what the evidence currently establishes. This also just into our newsroom. Nippon Dynawave released a statement that reads in parts, we are deeply disappointed by today's release of an initial update in the CSB investigation, which failed to include important facts and context regarding actions taken by NDP and the timeline events before the May 26 incident. The CSB's update is an initial step in an investigative process that can take up to 2 years to complete. It is not a final determination of the facts or cause. An attorney representing the victims of the explosion says they'll continue to work tirelessly to make sure those responsible are held accountable. The U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board is still looking into why the tank remained in operation in the first place, despite those inspections findings. Tim?
All right, Mo, thanks for the latest updates there and more to come. Appreciate it. Let's switch into some good news now. Hood to Coast is underway. Thousands of runners are taking part in the relay race from Timberline to Seaside. This is a live shot near the exchange point in Sandy, there on the mountain. The entire race is nearly 200 miles with more than 6,600 feet of elevation gain. All right, here's what it looked like earlier today when some of the first teams took off up at Timberline at Mount Hood. Here's a member of KGW's News Flash team wrapping up their leg just after 11 this morning. Now be aware that you might see some extra traffic this afternoon near the exchange point near OMSI and then along Highway 30 as the teams race to the coast.
We can't miss it. Like, we have a rule. It's like you can only not be part of the team if you're either pregnant or you're like really sick or dying. That's the only way you get out. And we actually have one of our runners running today. One of our runners today is running pregnant. Here she comes.
It was smooth transitions in and out. All the exchanges had, there was a little bit of bottleneck at one of them, but nothing, between the runner's time in and transition, it worked out perfect.
Running pregnant, I love that. All right, well, this all ends tomorrow with a big party at the beach at Seaside. Good luck to all the runners, including our KGW team. Let's check in with Rod Hill now. And Rod, pretty good weather so far for the runners.
Yeah, our Matthew Herchick was up there this morning. It was about 47 degrees at the time. And
pretty cool.
He was like, man, it's cold. But we've had Hood to Coast where it was in the 30s and the winds were gusting to 30 miles per hour. It was clear early this morning with no wind. And as I mentioned, the temperature was in the 40s. Still a lot of activity up there as waves of runners. There goes another wave right there, just leaving to begin their relay. It's 55 degrees up at the lodge. We are in the upper 60s now. We'll be in the 70s this afternoon. We're going to see increasing cloudiness, sunshine. So we're going to go from partly cloudy to mostly sunny. Back in the 40s for the runners tonight, moving over the Coast Range on the way to the beach. And then Seaside in the morning, 55 with a high of 64. There is at least the chance of a light shower Coast Range or in the Seaside tomorrow morning. But the odds are better that it will simply be dry and with no wind threat, just really ideal weather. Here we are at high noon, looking out to the east from the Wells Fargo building. We are actually at 70 degrees right now. Weather modeling takes us up to 77 at 5 p.m., which does match my forecast projection for today. Stick around, because when I see you next, we're going to be talking about something that we have not seen since June. And maybe a lot of what we haven't seen since June. Tim?
Good tease. All right, we'll wait for that. Thanks, Rod. Here's a look at some of your national headlines this afternoon. The Food and Drug Administration has confirmed the cyclospora outbreak linked to contaminated iceberg lettuce has spread to 3 more states. They say Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas have now been added to the list of states with cases, bringing the total number of states back up to 20. The FDA has linked the outbreak to recalled iceberg lettuce imported from Mexico by Taylor Farms. There have been nearly 11,500 people sickened, making it the largest outbreak of its kind in the United States. As of July, 17 cases have been reported here in Oregon. And speaking at today's annual gathering of central bankers in Wyoming, Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh broke the more than 2-decade-old tradition of signaling where interest rates are heading at that meeting. He did point out inflation is concerning, and it's known he is under pressure from his colleagues to raise rates. But Warsh made it clear that under his leadership, the central bank will be much more conservative about telegraphing its future plans. Meanwhile, President Trump says he will make it easier for ranchers to process their own meat amid pushback on his plan to import beef from other countries to push down prices. Right now, most of the country's beef is processed by just 4 meatpacking firms, which some say has driven up prices. Now, it's not clear how Trump will clear the way for ranchers to process their own meat, since there are strict rules around safety and inspections. Cattle ranchers are also upset about tariffs on imported ground beef that have been temporarily paused by the president. And speaking of tariffs, to the trade war that's heating up between the U.S. and Canada, one small local business, Portland Syrups, says it's caught in the middle of the international disagreement. Blair Best explains why that company's growing relationship with Canada has just unraveled.
In this Southeast Portland warehouse, locally brewed drink mixers are bottled, labeled, and shipped by hand.
We had been spending a couple years building our Canadian business.
Portland Syrup's CEO, Dan McLaughlin, says that meant creating bilingual packaging for one of the largest Canadian online retailers and up to 150 Canadian grocery stores.
So we had just, over the past month, we had just finished all that. So we had invested and had the labels ready, had everything good to go, had the thumbs up from the buyers, had POs in hand, and then it's like, oh wait, there's new tariffs, we just got to cancel everything.
Last week, the Trump administration imposed new 50% tariffs on Canadian goods.
We need to send a message loud and clear to the Prime Minister of Canada. Stop taking advantage of America. It's over. We expect fairness in our trade policy.
In Portland, Dan braced for the fallout.
This is going to affect like all of the small retailers in America who rely on, selling goods across the border.
On Tuesday, Canada retaliated.
Canada will meet the moment.
Slapping new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. products exported to Canada. And on that very same day, Portland Syrups lost more than $50,000 in Canadian orders.
But it's not because of the actual tariff number, it's because the buyers say that there's a general sentiment in Canada to boycott American goods.
A boycott hurting a small business right here in Portland.
So when you have things in your books that you're counting on and they disappear, then it definitely makes business a lot harder.
Portland Syrups does import some ingredients from outside the country. Dan says last year's tariffs cost them more than $100,000. That's money he does not expect to get back, just adding to the company's losses and the uncertainty ahead. Blair Best, KGW News.
Multnomah County Commissioners have voted to delay an increase in the preschool for all tax. The 0.8% jump for some income earners has now been delayed until 2028 at the earliest. And an advisor group recommended the delay to give the county time to, quote, resolve cost questions. They also say the projected number of students who could enroll has decreased, so the program doesn't need a tax hike. The tax applies on those earning above $125,000 a year or $200,000 for those filing jointly.